And I think that success, that word success, we've had it defined for us, haven't we? Through our whole life, through school, subconscious conditioning, in it goes. And I just wanted to redefine what success is and not make it a dirty word. Make it a word that, you know what? Success is feeling good. Success is sitting here talking to three amazing people and, like loving the conversation.
And I think, Matt, that probably came up in our little discussion around the title of the book, which Matt sort of proposed, the winning the second half. And I had a little bit of a reaction to it just based on the same thing that we have for so long equated success and winning with hustle, driving. And like in my mind, I was just going, oh, I don't want to win the second half. I want to thrive in the second half, or I want to get more rest in the second half. Like it was just a different paradigm to only kind of discover it's that same thing as there is no objective definition of what it means to win. And this is the beauty of the second half and having more wisdom and age and experience, that it's now the opportunity for winning to be defined by you with no rules, but purely just what's inside of you that wants to be expressed in your second half. And that's really exciting.
Welcome to the Wisdom We Share podcast, where ancient truths and modern intelligence weave together to inspire, ground, and shape us for a wiser, awakened life. I'm Anjani Amrit.
And I'm Robin Wald. And together we bring you fascinating conversations from the worlds of spirituality, science, and human behavior, so you can connect to your own inner wisdom, joy, and clarity, elevating the way you actually live your life.
Today we're diving into what it really means to win the second half of life, not through hustle or reinvention, but through wisdom. Our guests, Susan Pearse and Matt Elliott, have lived full first halves, leadership, sport, achievement, and then discovered that success alone doesn't sustain the soul. Matt is a former professional athlete who played rugby league for the St. George Dragons. Go the Dragons! Then had a stellar career as a rugby league coach. Today, he's the founder of The Change Room, one of Australia's leading programs in mindset, resilience, leadership, and transformation. Susan is a leadership strategist, mind fitness educator, and best-selling author in her own right. Their new book, Winning the Second Half, is a conversation between a man and a woman navigating midlife with honesty and hope. Susan and Matt, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great to have you guys. And this is my first time being introduced to and meeting both of you. So I would love a little backstory on, first of all, you wrote this book together in the second half of life. Are you guys together as a couple, as a partnership, as co-workers? Like, what is this relationship besides co-authors? And how did you come to decide that this was a book you wanted to write together?
This is just laughing. This is such a female question, and so many women have asked me the same type of question. I think we could spend a whole podcast unpacking why women are so fascinated with that. But Matt and I are definitely a meeting of the minds that when I released my fourth book, I was lucky enough to go on Matt's podcast that he was running with Anthony Minicello. And immediately when we started the interview, it was very obvious that a lot of our thinking is really aligned. And he'd been applying it in sports and elite performance and getting into leadership. And I'd been in leadership for probably 25 plus years at that time. And just so much of the thinking intersected that I think we got off that call and said, well, we need to do some more work together. And the book kind of evolved from that.
Matt, what's your take on the relationship?
I think Susan and I are great mates, and and Susan explained it perfectly. Is that we got off the podcast and Minnie looked at me, and I won't use the swear word that he used, but he went, "Holy dooly, that's there's a female version of you, Matt." It was so funny, and the collaboration around the book started was I put a structure of the book together and started writing it, and I went, this is so narrow that it's only going to be useful for a really small part of the population. And I reached out to Susan and said, saw if she wanted to co-write it with me. And yeah, it's made it like it's not just two perspectives. It's also enabled people to understand what their partners are going through. And and like I think if we were partners and we wrote it, it wouldn't be as powerful because it's not, yeah, I don't quite have the right explanation for that, but I just don't think it'll be as powerful.
Mm.
Yeah, it kind of I love the way you've come together on it, because for me it's kind of like two different perspectives, but could apply to anyone in any marriage, in any relationship, both life and business. And I think it's so clever how you've structured the book, that it makes it so relatable to people. And the topic is so important, especially in the era we're living in. And I kind of want to ask you both, what moment made you realize your own first half was done? Was it through writing this book? Did you have a realization through writing the book? Was it beforehand? What was it for each of you? Maybe Matt, you want to start first?
Well, my mirror works. That's the first thing. So my hair color's probably was a little bit of a giveaway on it. No, well, obviously I'm 60 now, and I'd like to be in denial, and I spent a little bit of my life in denial after coming out of being an elite sports coach, and probably not in a way that I wanted to. But I kind of realized the vulnerabilities of the wisdom that I'd accumulated. However, how poorly I was using it. And sometimes actually putting it down, and I've got to give Susan complete credit on the structure of the book. We fiddled with it in a whole lot of different ways. And then the conversational piece was probably the last of it. So there was quite a few ideas that were brought up first. So look, I guess I had a moment with two friends, and was probably the impetus of the starting of the book, where I had a friend who was super fit and healthy, same age as me, but was just whinging about everything. He was miserable. Honestly, it was just so, we were at a game of a sport that I love, that I used to coach, and it was just talking about, oh, young people today and life today. And I was like, God, how about we look to find a way to enjoy it? Then I had another friend who I'm really close with, has set himself up so well financially, but is so unhealthy. I just sort of thought we're living by past, paradigms that are now obsolete. Let's enjoy life. And, so many people live fear-based life. And I learned that off Susan about how our brain's wired, and like the media use fear on us. Everyone uses fear on us to make us withdraw. And we've got to actually break free of that. And that's part of what we wanted to do in the book.
Yeah, fantastic. And Susan?
I think for me, and I'm glad the way you framed that, because it's probably just made me realize that I don't think I did realize I was in my second half until the writing of the book. And the book almost became the journal that made me contemplate and throw everything open. And if I just look at the changes that I've made in my life during that process of writing the book, they're absolutely huge. But it wasn't until that point that I kind of realized there is this significant marker of like going, I'm now in the second half, that I can look back and I can celebrate everything in my life so far, but I am actually moving into a new phase. What do I want from that? And also, navigating as we do as women, navigating menopause and all of those things. It was the processing of all of that in the book that helped me come to those realizations. And I think really, if I look at most books that I write, I never feel like I'm doing it for an audience. I feel like I'm doing it for my own reflection. It's almost like the personal journal that then gets published to the world. And so, yeah, I credit the book with just that recognition of it's a new phase. That means there's new rules, there's new possibilities, there's, yeah, just a new experience.
I want to go back to something that you said, Matt, which actually echoes what you just said, Susan, about being in the process of writing it revealed a lot to you about sort of reflecting and where you were at and what you wanted next. And Matt, you said something about how you had a lot of wisdom, but the book made you aware of how poorly you were using it. So I'm curious if you could say more about that. Do you have any specific examples of where you were lacking that connection to your own wisdom or actually using it and living it in your life and what you've learned since writing the book?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's really about our subconscious conditioning, right? So when I was 20, 60 was old, right? So, you start to reflect upon yourself in that way. And all this, I've been so lucky to meet people like Deepak Chopra and engineers, like spending time with Leon Maxon and Bruce Lipton and other people where you know, I was starting to focus on what I can't do anymore. I was starting to focus on what happened in my past. And rather than be proud of it, I was sad that it was gone. And the book really helped me shift my attention to, well, what can I do
Mm.
with all this knowledge that I've accumulated? What kind of impact can I make on myself and on other people? And it's not until you actually start to understand that, like, the past is just a lesson. You've heard this from, unbelievable, you know, philosophers in the past. But the only thing that we can do right now is how we want to be, how I want to be right now in this conversation. I don't want to be here to impress. I want to, that's an ego-based thing. I learned that last week. It was a really interesting thing just to go, oh, you're doing that again. I'm here to actually share understanding and listen to what you guys have to share as well. And when you learn that as someone who's in the second half of their life, you get to actually enjoy life again. You get to actually elevate your joy and understand, like, how blessed we are. I know there's lots of things that we'd like to be happening better on the planet. Okay. But look at the amazing things that are happening on the planet, and the achievements and the fantastic people. We have our attention drawn to all this threat all the time. And I was living in it. And it's not a nice place to be. And for me, and some people don't have that opportunity to make that choice. But for me, it was a decision. What do you want to do? Do you want to think this way or that way? You want to feel this way or this way? And, you know, I always say this, it's easier to sit on the lounge than it is to exercise. It's easier to go get rubbish takeaway food than cook a healthy home cooked meal. And it's easier to sit on the lounge in a state of threat, angry, than it is to be inspired by what's going on the planet. And I just decided after writing the book that I'm going to go the harder path and be inspired by people like yourselves. That you're not here all you're doing is to serve people.
That's so inspiring. I mean, just hearing that is just so inspiring. And I know from my own personal experience, it's easy as we get older to go into that negative spiral. And so, what did each of you have to unlearn about what you thought was a success or your identity to really start to begin your second half more honestly, more authentically, with more joy? What did you have to unlearn about your success or your identity?
It's interesting because even as Matt kind of reflected, it's funny how we think we learn lessons and then it's like the same lessons just come up again 20 years later, and just that path of our own path to divinity or whatever you want to call it is like a spiral. And so I feel like for me, what I had to unlearn was the same things that I unlearnt when I was 25 and probably had my first wake up call to there's something bigger out there. And it was all around this stuff of people pleasing, ticking off the boxes of what I think I should be doing, as opposed to really getting in touch with my heart and my passion and all of that. And I went through a massive change with that in 25, when I was 25, letting go of control, all of these things. To think I had kind of mastered that, to only just go, yeah, only to the first level, and here's a whole range of other things. And so I think something I had to unlearn is just this looking for outside permission to be able to do something that I really, really want to do. Like, there's a whole heap of changes that I made when I just woke up and went, this is my life by my rules. And if I want to do something that is completely contrary to what anyone else might be doing in the world or what society expectations are, I don't have to wait for anyone's permission for that. I can just do it. And, just seeing myself fall into those same traps of, when the kids finish school, I can go and do this or learn this or have more time here, to actually just go, there's no time like the present to, get into things. So it's the unlearning of that delayed gratification, but also the unlearning of the people pleasing and the waiting for someone's permission to really step into who I wanted to be.
Yeah, I think we all get stuck in that. There's a societal momentum, isn't there, that we get carried in, and it's so easy to go along with that, as you were saying, Matt, and to buck the current and find your way out of that. So what about you, Matt? What did you have to learn about success or yourself to begin your second half? You said you had those realizations.
That word success, Anjani, is the key one. Is I had to redefine what success is. It wasn't about being on TV. It wasn't about earning whatever you earn. It was about how you're being. Like, it's okay for me to be proud of my past. I don't have to regret it anymore. It's okay for me to learn from that. And this used to be woo-woo, but I've got evidence on how my next book I'm writing at the moment, and it's it's how your being creates your achievements. If you're being miserable, angry, a victim, guess what? And this is, people call it the laws of attraction, the laws of imagination, whatever you want to call it. But, not very much stuff in life happens by accident. Most stuff happens as a result of what you're doing and who you're being. And I just found that I get a choice. I got grandkids now. I've got a beautiful family and all that sort of stuff. I can choose to be happy about that, can't I? Or I can choose to be at threat about it. Oh, I wonder what's happening with my daughters, and I hope they're all right. Yeah, whose choice is that? And I think that success, that word success, we've had it defined for us, haven't we? Through our whole life, through school, subconscious conditioning, in it goes. And I just wanted to redefine what success is, and not make it a dirty word. Make it a word that, you know what? Success is feeling good. Success is sitting here talking to three amazing people and, like, loving the conversation.
And I think, Matt, that probably came up in our little discussion around the title of the book, which Matt sort of proposed, the winning the second half. And I had a little bit of a reaction to it, just based on the same thing, that we have for so long equated success and winning with hustle, driving. And like, in my mind, I was just going, oh, I don't want to win the second half. I want to thrive in the second half, or I want to get more rest in the second half. Like, it was just a different paradigm to only kind of discover it's that same thing, is there is no objective definition of what it means to win. And this is the beauty of the second half, and having more wisdom and age and experience, that it's now the opportunity for winning to be defined by you, with no rules, but purely just what's inside of you that wants to be expressed in your second half. And that's really exciting.
I'm curious what role spirituality has played in your own personal evolution at arriving at this point in your life where you're feeling so optimistic and really like having choice around how you want to define yourself in this next part of your life. So, one thing you said earlier, Matt, was that, we live in a fear-based culture and the media is pushing us with fear, fear, fear. And often, people talk about that the antidote to fear is faith or spirituality or some higher perspective. So I'm wondering if you could each speak to your own personal sense of faith, or like how do you connect on a spiritual level that gives you the optimism to then move forward?
I'll
Greg,
go then.
you go.
That was your pause there. Spirituality for me has been something that I sort of learnt in my late 30s. And I was an atheist. The reason that I was that is that again, my father served in World War II, and he came from a very Christian family, but he had nothing to do with that. So my family life was not, don't believe in it. We was never spoken about. But I guess if someone has served in a conflict, you can maybe understand why that wasn't prevalent. Um, and I saw the conflict around the planet based on people's beliefs, and that didn't really make a lot of sense to me. But I heard an interview that Tony Robbins did with Deepak Chopra one time, and I can tell you exactly where I was. I was in a car, and I'm not going to go the full story of it, but that was in 2003. And in 2007, I got to meet Deepak and spend time with him, and he made the understanding, whether you want to call it spirituality, source, the universe, I think there's too many arguments over what we want to call it. And it's great. I don't think we'll ever be able to explain it fully. And I think that's a really good thing that, it keeps that curiosity high in us. But Deepak gave me access to an understanding of it that made complete sense to me. And I became very enamored with it for a while. And now I've sort of sat back and understand it's not about what you call it. Whatever you want to call it, it's not the energy that we're gifted. Okay, it's up to us to how we transform it into our life. And you can call it God, source, whatever you want to call it. That's not the most important thing. All those people that shared that wisdom with us were trying to give us access to that energy on how you live. And it's disappointing that I believe that a lot of that information's been poorly used and used for power, and particularly with men, my age. It's a way to generate power through fear that if you don't do this, whereas my current belief with it, and as I said, it's always evolving. My current belief with it is that you are that energy, and you get the choice on how you want to use it. And if you don't have the same opinion of it, that's fine. But we're not here to hurt each other. We're not here to run each other down. I don't believe that. And that's not me being a nice guy. I just don't think that's why we were gifted that energy. And yeah, so yes, I do believe in spirituality. But like everyone else, I'm giving a theory. Some people say they know it. I'm just sharing what I believe is a theory of it.
I
Mm.
really appreciate how you verbalize that, and that, especially the time we're living in right now where we're on the verge of holy wars and religious wars like we haven't seen in hundreds of years or millennia, have we not learned these lessons yet? And to hear your perspective that there's a humility in what you're saying, like I know what makes sense to me, and people call it different things, but I believe we're here to do good and not. I think that that's a really important thing for all of us to really hold some hope and faith in, right? We're here for a higher good, not a higher evil, you know?
Does make you wonder, doesn't it, if they all went back and went to whatever it is they believed in, went, do you think this is worth having a war over that they don't believe in the same thing? What would that source say to them? Yeah, go to war. I can't manufacture that in my brain, in my body, in any way, shape, or form. They just got a different opinion to you. Let them live their life their way, and you live your life your way because this stuff works.
Yeah. Susan, how are you living your life in spirituality?
Um, it's interesting question because I definitely think there's been a point in my life, and I think it was definitely in my 20s, even though I can see a curiosity from the smallest of ages, like this pull towards spirituality. I remember being very young, growing up in a small town, and when the Hare Krishna bus used to come to town, they'd sort of park in the middle, and I'd go on the bus and talk to people and all these type of things. So the curiosity's been there the whole time, but I think the shift now is I very much live my life and believe that spirituality is the main course, and everything I'm doing, whether it's parenting, the work I do in the world, all of that stuff, they're all just the side dishes that are kind of acting as mirrors to the things that I need to be working on. And I'm not diminishing their importance, but I just see everything through that spiritual lens. It's funny, probably one of my closest friends, she'll often ring up and, she'll say, "Oh, how's work going?" Work to us isn't, "Oh, I was with this client or I did this speaking gig or I did whatever." Work is, "Oh, yeah, my control issues have resurfaced again. And, this is what's happened. And this is how I'm, trying to process that in my body." And I just kind of see now that everything that happens around me is happening to excavate something within my own body. And there's definitely been a shift in my spirituality that I think when I first discovered there was a pathway there, it was very much meditation and all of these things to kind of rise above everything. And I think in definitely the second half from 40 and onwards, I've realized that spirituality, and particularly for me as a woman, is in my body. It's not out there. And the only way to actually overcome things is to go through all of this memory, baggage, karmic things, like all of this stuff that's just stuck in our bodies. And yeah, everything that's happening around us is just assisting us to be able to let that go for the greater good of humanity. So I can be a better parent, so I can be a better co-worker, so I can be better in serving people in the work that I do.
Mm.
But the main game is spirituality. And that's, I often think however you start your day probably often shows what's important to you. And there's just sometimes where I don't even get into normal life for probably about 3 hours until I have done the things that connect me and remind me of that truth.
Mm. It's a lovely way to view life, that is possibly not the norm. And you're talking about that inner work, the inner work, looking at our own thoughts, looking at our emotions, looking at how we might be projecting, looking at life through that higher lens, that higher perspective, so that we can grow and evolve. I love that. And so can you share, each of you, what a specific, not the whole 3 hour routine maybe, but specifically, well, you can, I'll love it, I'll listen to it all night, but specifically, like, what kind of spiritual practices or daily practices or daily routines you have that hold you and keep you in that higher perspective, or carry you through the difficulties, the changes, the fluxes, the uncertainties in life.
Yeah, I'll continue on if that's okay. I think yeah, as you explain, it's a lovely way to view life, but it's the hardest work I've ever done in my whole life. And I've never experienced such fear and needed to draw on my courage as much as doing this work. So that thing about having your pillars that keep the stability to some degree there is so important to me. And so it's kind of for me when I wake up, it's the how do I remind myself of that? And for me, it's hitting the yoga mat. So when I probably about the time I entered the second half, which we kind of say is around 40, I decided to become a Kundalini yoga teacher, and I traveled to Spain to study with, my favorite teacher. And so that practice is still something that's in my life. So that'll tend to be the first thing that I do at the start of the day. And also like to bring in some type of meditation or at least intention setting to remind myself that the work that I do today is just an expression of what wants to come through me. It's not about getting hung up on this meeting or being nervous about this thing or any of that stuff, but just, asking for grace to kind of flow through me. So starts like that, but then it goes into, and it depends where I am, but for at least half of the time, it's spending a good couple of hours in nature because, again, that is so important to me to just be grounded and to get all the messages from national parks and oceans and all of that sort of stuff. So the combination of moving my body, but doing it in a way that I'm just expressing gratitude for nature and connecting to nature.
Yeah, beautiful. And Matt?
I guess probably some of my past makes me very routine around this. So I've been doing a meditation practice called Kelee meditation. It's a 5-minute practice developed by Ron Rathbun, who's now that's being taught at San Diego Medical University. So I've been doing that since 2010, 9, sorry. And that's a 5-minute practice in the morning with journaling and 5-minute at night. And then every morning I do normally 30 minutes of cardio with my eyes closed. And I probably about, how long ago was it? 3 years ago, I went to a Joe Dispenza retreat on the Sunshine Coast, and it was amazing. And I came back, and even Deepak stuff, and I went, you know what? I wonder if they listen to themselves doing guided meditation. And I decided they don't. So I developed my own process that I do every day that takes 30 minutes. I just get on a rower or a bike and listen for, go through my own process until the music stops after 30 minutes. And my new challenge around all that is now do this. So I don't, like, I know a lot of people that have accessed stuff through doing their meditations. I access silence and darkness. And the more I can stay in with no thought, that's what I try and do in my meditation. My stuff that I do exercising is more about manifestation than meditation. My new challenge is you've got to feel this way and be this way with your eyes open. It's great that you can do this, connecting to nature. You can do it with, sitting in a quiet room. You've got to be this way in life. And that's where my conditioning as a white Australian male gets challenged. And it was just fun. I used to think it was hard, but now I've just decided it's fun. Well, it's up to me to frame it because it is difficult sometimes to, feel the way that I want to feel all the time.
I think that raises a really important point and reminds me of the first time I ever did yoga. I think it was in my early 20s, and it was my first introduction to the practice. And I remember driving out of the venue at the end of the day, and there's these people raging, having road rage in their cars and stuff, and I'm thinking, you've just been to yoga for an hour and a half, so there's me judging. But it just really brought home, I remember, this thing about you can't have a practice that goes for 1 hour or 20 minutes or whatever, and for the rest of the day be thrown around with your ego. It's then how do you have the little moments of connection that bring you back in? I think that's really important.
And that's why, like Wayne Dyer, he sums it up beautifully, that ego is edging God out.
Mm.
That's what he called it. And I look at that most mornings just to remind myself, that was, again, God. Let's not be scared of that. That's just his description of what we are calling spirituality.
Let's just say God lots of times so people, just get used to it. God, 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 God.
Yeah.
Let's just let them get used to it.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Um, I'm curious, Matt, if you could tell us just a little bit abbreviated version about the change room. What are your goals there? And now that you're in, your second half, well into your second half, like what are your goals for the future? And you mentioned family as being super important to you. Do you see yourself slowing down, retiring, passing the baton along to someone else, or are you feeling very called to continue to contribute through your work?
That's a really good question. First of all, the change room really operates across a couple of areas, but we started specifically with injured workers and predominantly psych injuries. And we have 8 foundations that are really practical, from how you think, how you feel, how you breathe, how you move, how you sleep, um, how you connect with people, exercise. And what we did was we don't take all those 8 foundations, just choose one or two, because if you sleep better, you'll probably wake up with better mental clarity, that you'll probably make better decisions, and you'll probably, if you eat better, you'll feel better. And so it's, we had a lot of success with it. A lot of success with it. Coming out of COVID, the industry that we worked in has been in a little bit of a dung fight still for a fair while. So we're getting back to it, but we also do leadership and corporate stuff as well as with government agencies for preventative work. And you know what? It's pretty much the same content. Um, with the recovery and the prevention. So uh, it's interesting. I don't frame any of that as work. I get to do. So if you talk about family, I feel like that's family as well. So I have no ambition. Look, I'm not a very good gardener. I don't go fishing. If you said, well, what do you want to do, Matt, every day? If I could go to a room full of people and work out how we can heal that room, that'll do me. I learn more from the people that we work with than they learn from me. I know that because I'm just taking in stuff from them all the time. And all that does is elevate the power that we can make difference to other people. And that's probably something that's been a bit of a strength of ours, particularly in recent times. You can imagine, as a past, rugby league coach, I was very structured, and we need systems of development and blah, blah, blah. And I've learned that, yeah, look, that they're handy as a background, but the stuff that Susan and I have gone, if I told you like how we've saved millions of dollars in centers, is like, we got leadership to do this. Hold on, brace yourself, get out and walk the floor and say hello to their staff instead of hiding in their office. That's it. So I just started to also understand the power of simplicity
Mm.
and making that choice, and because it is easier to sit in your office than go down and interact with all your staff, but it's not better. And that's one simple example of about 50 that I've got, and just to see that be put into practice. Like some things are timeless. Like we're evolving at really rapid speed, aren't we? And it's fun. I'm not resisting it. I'm not saying, oh, back in my day. No, it's amazing, the technology, and it's amazing how people are, evolving. But there's some things that are timeless that you just get, particularly in the last probably 4 or 5 years, I've got a reminder of, yeah, don't ever walk past that stuff.
I love that. What's easy versus what's better for us is a real gem there. Yeah. And Susan?
Actually, I remember Matt and Minnie asking me this question in their podcast. That was nearly 3 years ago, and it was kind of like, you've written 4 books and you've done this. What's next? Like, what are your big goals? And I remember saying at the time, my goals are more space in my life, more and better connection, more expression of myself through music and art. Like, none of it was work related. It was just this deep craving I suppose, to be more and get out of like just, the busyness, even though I feel like I've been on that journey for numerous decades. And so, even though I said that at the time, I since wrote this book with Matt. We've had so many things that we've been doing that I've absolutely loved doing. And I think the space I've just moved to is I don't really have goals and intentions. I just want to slow down, have more space, and really meet the things that are coming to me rather than have there's a goal for this next book and this thing and that thing. It's just kind of like meeting what's there, because I never would have predicted I was going to write a book with Matt Elliott. Or I never would have predicted or had on my goal list of speaking at South by Southwest. All of that stuff just comes because it's meant for me and it's meant for us and whoever. And it's kind of just being in the space where I can meet whatever is purposeful that's coming towards me.
Matt, can you talk to that as well, being in the space to receive what's coming at me? Because you talked a while ago about manifestation. What's your approach to that, take on that?
Yeah, again, it's funny how you get exposed to some wonderful mentors, and like Angela, because you've been in the same space, and um, I'm really focused on how you're being. And I know that sounds simple. It's a little bit like walking the floor, right? But I consciously have to make a decision. Like when you get up in the morning, let me use this. You don't tend to get up and go, oh, this is an amazing day, and oh, I can't wait to get out of bed, and it's gonna. Oh, I've got that coffee waiting for me. You tend to, because of the way our brain's wired, you tend to go for, oh no, and I got this and I got that, and so it's easy to keep that momentum going. It's actually becomes very difficult to turn that momentum around, even if you do my Kelee meditation. So I've really worked on how I want to be. And the more I can be that, and it's not this, again, I know people call it the laws of attraction and they dive under tables and stuff like that about, I just know in my personal experience with all this, I had some really amazing success, you know, you know, on how I became a head coach. And I wasn't surprised by any of it because I was actually being that way before it. I share a story. I worked with Mick Fanning, world champion surfer, for a long time before he was a world champion. His conduct was a world champion before he was one. He did all the things that he needed to do and felt the way he needed to feel. Again, he didn't win that first title and go, oh, God, I can't believe this has happened. Mm-hmm. Just doesn't happen that way. So I want to be a certain way that my grandkids like being in my space. I want to be a certain way, like Susan just said, where we get up and speak, and I'm not trying to impress people. I serve them. They go away and go, shit, I can use that. That's something that I can actually bring into my life. And you know what I get the most joy out of? I get a text message from someone and go, oh, look, thanks. I just want to, I had this happen and I'm feeling, I'm lucky that I get a few of those of how life has been. It's not my information. I use all those incredible, I give people access to that. Sometimes, when you have a conversation with Deepak, I have to go, stop, man. Hang on. That is way beyond what I understand. But I've got my gift is I can give people access to stuff that isn't accessible to them. So I don't create the information. So I just get to access it and share it. And maybe, that's what God's given me. That maybe that's what Source has given me as my skill set.
That's beautiful. Actually, that really speaks to why Anjani and I started this podcast, right? Because who are we being in the world is we both wanting to just show up in a way that is like sharing wisdom and letting people share their wisdom and other people glean from that what they need, what they could apply in their own life. And it's all about this kind of creating a community where everybody can, come to the door and get what they need and raise consciousness and elevate, um, and it's what you said, Matt, about being of service, right? I just want to serve people. It's not egoic. It's not about what am I getting? It's I just want to be of service. I was put here by God to give with certain skills and gifts and talents, and how can I offer that, as a free gift and offering into whoever can receive it? Yeah,
And you know what happens with that? Is like this conversation here that we serve each other, and then you get information back. Yeah, you get people coming and telling you stuff.
sure.
It's weird. The more you do this service, people just come up to you and tell you stuff, and you take away more wisdom. So it's not a one-way street. I'm here to serve you all. Now sit down, and it just doesn't work that way. Is that I find the more that I can give people access to that stuff, the more I get to learn from them, and the more
And
ability.
that's also the fun part, right? Isn't that the
Yeah,
fun part?
yeah.
Because then it feeds your own curiosity and your own sense of playfulness and joy and like, whoa, look what I learned from this person. It just makes it really wonderful to be alive each day when you're interacting in that level.
And the most underutilized high performance tool on the planet. I share it all the time. Fun.
Yeah, you dropped the F word. This is what we usually ask our guests is what Robin usually asks us, but I'm going to ask it today. What do each of you do for fun?
Do you want me to
Your
go?
turn, Susan.
Again, just like I said before, I feel like spirituality is the main course. I also feel like a big part of spirituality is bringing as much fun and joy into your life. So, a few things for me, like music is definitely a really big passion of mine, like being in the audiences for live music. And I just love that experience of community that happens when people gather to experience and move with music. To the point that I then decided at the age of 50, I'd like to become a rock drummer, and I've now joined a band and play the drums. Still not great at it, but I get so much joy out of that. So yeah, it's just those things of music, then anything to do with nature, anything to do with the water, like being in the water, being on the water. And just like the fun that I get from the great relationships that I have around me and being able to laugh with my girlfriends or clients or basically anyone that I deal with.
That's so cool. What's the name of your band?
The outros, they're called.
Outros. Okay, we'll look out. Are you on Spotify? Are you on the platforms?
We're not that good yet.
We will watch this space. And Matt, what do you do for fun?
Oh, well, I've probably mentioned my grandkids about 50,000 times, right? Well, I'm lucky enough that I live right next door to two of my grandkids. So, I woke up this morning beside my 3-year-old
Mm.
grandson, and we had fun straight away. I walked next door and my 1-year-old grandson was there. And, it's really interesting. It's a little bit like what we've been discussing is, like Robin said, is when you actually, kids pick up your state quicker than anyone else. If you're miserable, they ain't coming near you, right? So, it's just so nice to walk into my daughter's house and have my 1-year-old come flying at you along the floor and climb up your leg. You know what I mean? Is how much fun's that?
Mm.
So I get most of my fun out of human connection,
Mm.
friends, going to a cafe and boring people by talking to the people sitting at the table beside me, that sort of stuff. I love it. Yep. speaking, doing speaking things, probably a little bit different to other people rather than, normally just standing on the stage and normally go down and be a bit of a pain in the backside. And I like people cringing, so that gives me fun as well. So yeah, that side of things I adore.
Awesome.
Great.
And
Any final words of wisdom, advice, wisdom that you want to share before we sign off for?
what would you tell your 30-year-old self now, if you knowing, having lived past that age, now you're in your second halves, what would you
Think
tell
that.
what would you tell your 30-year-old self or 20-year-old self? What wisdom would you share with them?
Mine would probably be a couple of things. One would be don't be so hard on yourself. Don't take everything so serious. Don't make a life out of just fixing yourself. Experience the fun, experiencing the joy, but also not probably in these words, but I think one of the motivations of our book and reflections of our book, I guess, is that if we started doing a lot of these things when we were 30, our second halves would really be quite different. And my message to myself then, I was always kind of into physical health, but the need for a holistic look at your well-being, from physical to mind and mindset through to emotions through to spirituality and how you connect with each other, just to be more balanced in making sure that I'm putting investment in all of those areas.
Mm, great. Matt?
Such a good question. I would probably say just keep enjoying it. Just keep enjoying it. I had an amazing, I would have preferred that my dad didn't pass when I was, 13 years old. And I would have preferred there was a lot of things that didn't happen in my life. And I wish I understood what emotions were,
Mm,
because we're never taught what they are. I had to learn the hard way. But, the fact that I had to learn the hard way, maybe that's a good thing. So I don't know if I'd change anything, to be honest with you. Maybe it should be the other way around. Maybe my 60-year-old self should go back to my 20-year-old self and go, or maybe my 8-year-old self, what would you do in this situation, bro? Because I kind of feel like there was the joy for life then, it slowly gets taken away from us, doesn't it? Through our programming, through school, through God, I can't even watch TV.
mm,
It's they're just trying to manipulate. I feel like we're trying to be manipulated through fear. I realize, stop it. So I'd go back to my 8-year-old self rather than the other way around, and go, mate, what would you do here? Because I know what he'd say. Go out and have fun.
mm,
Don't worry about it.
mm.
Don't watch it.
Yeah.
That's just a fabulous perspective. I love that you brought us there.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. Let's all just sit with our 8-year-olds right now. The innocence and purity and the wisdom of that childhood. You're so right that it does get stripped away, and it's so important that we bring it back. So
Can I ask a question? Because you guys might know that. Why is it? Because that fear in our brains, Susan, you tell us about, was our brains are wired 3.1 to 1 to see threat over joy. I don't feel like I had any fear as an 8-year-old. None. Not of jumping off roofs, not of sharks in the water. You know, does our brain progress that way? Or are we just like, is that what an 8-year-old boy is like?
I reckon it's a combination of conditioning and when we get into systems being told to look for all the fearful stuff. But the other thing is there is brain stuff that consequential part of the brain doesn't really develop until you're in your early 20s, and particularly for boys it's definitely sort of, that early part of your 20s, and so you're just living a carefree life where you don't see the consequences of a lot of the things that you do, which is, yeah, sometimes that ignorance is absolutely bliss.
yeah, I think it's known as the great unlearning, isn't it? That we can have that as an awareness, but then there has to be some unlearning and unraveling of that so that we don't shrink into fear, our lives don't shrink. So thank you so much, both of you, for spending your time with us. It's been really really rewarding having your wisdom shared. Where can we find your book, your books, your work? How can people find you?
The books, Amazon tends to be the best place to find, because you'll find the ebook there as well as the print copy book as well. And Matt, websites?
Yeah, the changeroom.info is another place that you can go to. Yeah, Coach Matt Elliott is all another place that you can go to. Susan's website as well.
Find us on socials. We're kind of everywhere. Just do a bit of a Google and you'll find us everywhere.
Yeah.
Great. And we'll link all of that in the show notes so people who want to find you will know exactly where to go. Thank
Thank
you
you.
both so much. Really a pleasure to have this conversation and to listen to your perspectives.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you both for reminding us that the second half isn't about decline, it's about depth. And for anyone listening, we hope that these stories really help you see that wisdom isn't what you know, it's what you live. Susan and Matt, thank you both for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Wisdom We Share podcast. We hope today's episode sparked some new insight, imagination, and practical tools you can integrate into your daily life.
Continue this journey with us by subscribing, sharing, and dropping us a review. Until next time, stay wise.